Part 2. So, after my surgery, I ended up going to 6 South. CO told me in the emergency room I'd call her anytime, and my first thought is, I don't want to fucking call you, I don't want to call First Sergeant, I just want you fuckers to go away. After I arrived at 6 South, I started doing, I get settled in, start doing the groups. At this point, my arm is wrapped up. I have a half cast with ACE wraps around it. And, my hand was working. I could get movement back in my hand, which I was thankful for. Immediately when I was there, things didn't go well. Next day, psychiatrist pulls me in her office, and I just start bawling my eyes out. And she asked me if I still had thoughts of suicide, and I said, yes. I wish I fucking succeeded. I want to die. Word for word, that's what I said to her. Things. In my mind, I'm just kind of trying to exist and move forward. So, we had a meeting. My psychiatrist informs me that, she explains to me that my CO expressed that people think I'm a threat in my company, and I'm like, alright, maybe it's the people that reported me, which I understand. Maybe they thought that, with everything happening, that I didn't understand the context. I don't know what the fuck, why people thought this completely. So, this is what my CO told my psychiatrist. Well, he's perceived as a threat in our company. Just right off the bat. He says off-putting comments, and I'm like, yes, I'll admit that, but I have been in the infantry for, at that point, well over 6 years. Granted, while the Army was changing. Every 11 Bravo says off-putting comments. Like, the thing I hated about my CO, she acted like a fucking high school teacher. Like, that's inappropriate. This is like, the job is inappropriate. It's go close with and destroy the enemy. That's the mission statement of an 11 Bravo or Charlie in the United States Army. So, the culture that I always knew was we don't get offended by anything. Nothing offends you. And if you get offended, you're the problem. Not always the case, and it shouldn't be like that, but I'd rather have that than this fucking... I felt like I was back in middle school, and she was a shitty teacher I had to deal with. And that's the biggest thing that I hated. When she told me that, she also said that there's 5 soldiers that are terrified that I'm going to discharge and come after them. And I'm like, what? I was thinking, is she trying to egg me on to want me to kill myself again? Is this true? Like, are people really concerned? And then maybe I should talk to her and let her know I'm not a threat. I'm not going after anybody. And that I just want to get better. What's the fucking game here? So I started getting overwhelmed with emotions, because after trying to kill yourself and you hear this, it's not very flattering. So I asked to leave before our session was over. So I call her and I inform her, hey ma'am, I want to let you know I do not have any intent of coming after anybody. I don't know where you heard this from. If this is from the guys that reported me, cool. They did nothing wrong. I did the dumb shit and got reported. Like, I accept that. When I got reported, my first thought was, oh, I'm fucked. Like, there was no, how dare they get offended? They should, no, there was none of that. It was, I violated Army regs, I got reported, I got caught, I got in trouble. There was no, in my mind, of, I gotta go after those guys, how dare they? None of that. You reap what you owe. That's the saying. Stupid is what stupid does, like I always say. I had no intention of going after anybody. I was just trying to, I don't know, not think about some way of dying every 5 minutes. Trying to get better, man. That's all I wanted. But in this conversation with her, I also inform her, I want to let you know I'm going to my separation board. Mainly, I did want to stay in, but if that didn't work, because you got to accept that. Your time comes, you'll get forced out of the Army when your time comes. I was not getting forced out with anything less than honorable. What drove me to want to kill myself is the lack of value in me and just not being fair and impartial. And here's what I mean by that. We had 3 dudes who did drugs, and they were getting kicked out with general discharges. You have 3 types of administrative discharges: honorable, general, and then other than honorable. She recommended me for an other than honorable. Why? Simply because she was mad at me. She didn't look in my AMR files and see that I had 2 good conduct medals, which indicates 2 enlistment periods with no adverse actions. She didn't do any of that. She was not fair and impartial. She was emotional, and she said, in her mind, that's what I'm thinking, I'm going to ruin his life because he called me a bitch. And that drove me to want to kill myself. That's where this came from. So I also told her I'm getting a lawyer and I'm going to the board, and she tells me the only discharges that come across my desk are either general or other than honorable. And I'm like, boy, that was a fucking switch. First you're sweet to me having a good conversation, now I'm like, well, I'm going to my separation board. Next day, they're like, hey, your commander's here to see you. I'm like, okay, commander's coming to see me. She has a manila folder in her hand. We go talk. And the whole time she's talking, I could tell she's just being fucking fake. How is your hand? And I'm like, well, I can move it now. Showing her I could pick up a pen. It's difficult, but I could do it. And just the fakeness on her face and her tone of voice, I could see it. And that's just how she was from what was described to me from the other guys I was on extra duty with at the time. And I'm like, all right. So I cut off her what she's talking about, what she got there. And she hands me her letter of intent for my separation. Chapter 14C, Patterns of Misconduct. Recommendation other than honorable discharge. I tried to stay cool. Just thinking about this now drives me insane a little bit. You know, I'm like, so how do you feel about that? And I'm like, not gonna lie, this is a lot, ma'am. Part of that conversation, I remember asking her to tell the rear DNCOC to bring me my phone so I could pay some bills. They put in 3 orders for my phone. It never showed up. I wonder why. After she left, I just sat in the day room in 6 South, and I was sitting there. And it hit me. I was an NCO for 2 fucking years. I have done so much for this job, for my career, my nation. Just to, well, I don't like him, so I'm gonna make sure he gets another honorable. Are you fucking kidding me? I start losing it. My psychiatrist informed me, and I now know this, it's just a letter of intent. Even though recommendations help, they're just recommendations, they can be turned down. At the time, though, I thought my world was falling apart, and I started crying. I was done, man. Right then and there, I didn't give a fuck about anything. And right then and there, I decided I'm going to end my life again. And I began making a plan. I started writing in the notebook that I had, they gave us. Started writing my plan, how I was going to do it. I began doing research on the pills they were prescribing me, and I figured when I read them, you can't overdose on these pills. So I started going into detail about what I was going to do to myself, and I was going to overdose. That was how I was going to die. Then I get a call from my buddy. Desk lets me know there's a PFC so-and-so who wants to call you. I went, okay. So I could take the phone number and go into the kitchen, and I call him. And he let me know how much the platoon cares, how they were worried about me, and how my platoon sergeant cared, which shocked me. Now, at the time, in my mind, not only did I want nothing to do with my platoon sergeant, I thought he fucking hated me. I found out that wasn't true. He cared, and he deeply cared. Maybe me as a person, probably not, but just that his soldier was almost died, and he cared about my well-being. I vent to Kennedy. I'm like, dude, this is fucking insane, man. She's trying to get me another than honorable discharge. I can't fucking live with that, dude. I'm losing my shit. Like, this is bullshit. You know, I was venting to him. Tells me how things are going at JRT and tells me, just please get better, man. That's all we want from you. And I tried to put away that little ideation of I'm going to end my life again to get better for him. I'm like, well, the squad I was in was solid. The platoon was great, and they fucking cared. And you know what? I decided to stick it out for them. I decided to put my feelings aside, stop being a little bitch, and just try to get better for them. And then he tells me, goes into detail about how my platoon sergeant was fucked up from the experience. So when I did slip my wrist and I was in the ambulance, he tells me that everyone, all the leadership sat in the office silent. They were all fucked up from it. And he said my platoon sergeant was the most fucked up. And I was shocked at that. I said, really? He goes, yeah, dude. He just stared at the wall and couldn't move. He couldn't work or do anything. I went, oh my God. I began feeling guilty. I'm like, yo, do you have his phone number? So I wrote down his phone number. And through my experience going to JRTC, I knew that they were in white cell preparing to go in the box. So I was trying to predict, when is he going to be free? Alright, so I started trying to pick out times throughout the day, maybe be at the rail yard doing some railhead NCOIC stuff, and you could take a quick 5-minute phone call. Maybe he'd be in his bunk, in his bed, I didn't know. I'm just going from my experience from JRTC, and I realized I had to call this dude because he cared. And the last interaction that we had was him saying, no, just from this misconduct you're getting an OTH, and then me trying to off myself. And I didn't want him to live with that guilt, at least for a little bit. I wanted to get in contact with him to let him know, so that wasn't a burden on him. So I called twice, no answer. I went, okay, busy. And then I waited till 9 p.m. Our time. I think it was 11 p.m. because during the weekends we were able to go to bed at 11, and Louisiana's 2 hours behind North Carolina, so I predicted that's a little late, but most dudes weren't going to bed till 10 or 11 anyway. I needed to be on the phone, so I decided to call him for that. And I tried calling him, didn't work, and I called Kent, my buddy, and he was like, hey, the platoon sergeant was actually like, hey, is he on the phone? Yeah, oh, I don't know if he wants to talk to me. I went, okay. As I tried calling him, I guess he got pulled away for something else, so I made it a priority. I gotta call this dude. Eventually, I gave up. I went, all right, he's probably in meetings. He's too busy. At least he now knows I tried to get in contact with him. Maybe that'll help him out. Next day, one of the nurses came to talk to me. And she's like, could you please not call your leadership at 11 night? And I stop in my tracks and I'm like, wait a minute. Did I fuck that up? 3 JRTC rotations? 4 polk is 2 hours ahead of us? I'm like, we're in bed on the weekdays by 10 and on the weekends by 11. The latest I could have possibly called was just before 9 p.m. Central Time. Our time, it would have been close to 11 p.m. And I'm like, what the fuck? And eventually, I said, hey, can I go now? I got mad. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I knew my commander had something to fucking do with this, as she always does. So I sat down with my psychiatrist, and she was mad, but not at me. So she goes, so your commander talked to me, Somehow, my boss's boss, the deputy chief of behavioral health, also my battalion commander's wife at the time, contacted me to tell you to stop calling so late. I'm like, my first thought is, how did this get so high up? Found out my commander, when she didn't get her way, she just fucking bitched to the battalion commander until he gave her what she wanted. Not mad at the dude. BC we had was pretty solid. I can only imagine what it was like dealing with her as a supervisor. So he did something. And I understand that, because his mind, as a battalion commander, his mind is JRTC. That's all he needed to think about. I get that. She also explains, my commander goes, my commander informed my psychiatrist that I'm trying to rally the troops against her. And I'm like, what the fuck? I do not know how this conversation went. My buddy was, I don't want to say close to the commander, but they did go back and forth from time to time. And I don't know, maybe he talked to her about that. Maybe he was angry. I don't know how he felt about it. I don't know. I didn't encourage him. Hey, the commander's doing this. Get the boys together. Go. No, none of that happened. I just vented to him. I'm like, dude, I'm breaking out. I'm getting another honorable discharge. This is bullshit. I can only assume he talked to her. That's it. So she claims I'm trying to rally the troops against her and that it was inappropriate to call a private, who at the fucking time was a weapons squad leader. A fucking private was a weapons squad leader, which is the next step down from platoon sergeant. She was pulling every reg in the book to try to fuck with me. I don't know what the fuck was wrong with my battalion, with my company commander, I don't know if she was bipolar or if she was just an evil fucking person, but that's just sick. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say maybe she wants to manipulate young impressionable privates into following her in her toxic ways. That's the only thing I can assume. And she begins to tell my psychiatrist, you need to limit his phone use and tell him this. My psychiatrist fires back and goes, first of all, he is not a prisoner here. You can call him yourself and tell him that. You know the number to the hospital. It's like, oh damn. Second of all, we've observed his phone use, and the staff says his phone use has been appropriate. And my psychiatrist looked me in the face and goes, it sounds like your leadership's targeting you. And immediately, while she was on my side, she stuck up for me, I began to kind of fall apart from that, because that was the reality. The whole time, I kept going in my mind, you fucked up, dude. You called her a bitch. You lost your stripes. This is what you get. And the last thing I wanted was to play victim. Like, I'm perfect and everyone else is wrong. I didn't want that. And I kept telling myself, this is it. But no, that was the fucking reality. I was being targeted. And I was fucking terrified. So I didn't take that well, even though it sounds like good news that I got some people on my side, because that entire ward stuck up for me. From then on, the relationship with my leadership and them was not good. And my psychiatrist recommended that I move companies, because I explained, hey, I'm not trying to get out of this chapter. You can chapter me in another company, because when I was at Campbell, we did that to a dude who was med boarding. We put him under a new UIC, and we med boarded him. First it was a chapter, but it changed to a med board. It's possible, and I know they could have done that. And one of the majors in the battalion who was in the rear, when they talked to him, my psychiatrist, they recommended that, and my commander said no, and I asked to move platoons, because I don't know if my platoon sergeant was switching moods, and maybe, because at my time, I'm like, maybe he switched moods and decided to slam me. I wanted to get away from him. They said, no, your leadership can take care of you. That's what they said. And I'm like, all right. I knew they were trying to tell the psychiatrist, no, we care about it. We do care. And they don't know infantry culture. They don't know that people fucking lie. They don't know how underhanded the infantry can be. And I tried explaining that to them, and they began to learn more about how things worked outside of MedCom. But I start losing. I'm like, I'm going back to these fucking people. I'm getting an OTH. So I start planning with what little I could. I began doing research, like on the pills I was taking. Wanted to see what I could OD on. And then got out of that again. I was like, nope. So I was also informed behavioral health was coming to 6 South to do my chapter eval. Whenever you're getting chaptered, they do an eval on you to make sure you weren't insane at the time. That way the Army can cover its ass, so they can just kick you out and say it was your fucking fault. They do my eval. And it's the same captain that kind of just blew me off at behavioral health. And I wasn't like that. She brought a her supervisor with her. My first thought is, she probably causes problems. Her major's probably there to make sure things go right. And this is how it went. They began interrogating me for 2 hours, asking me about different jobs I've had. I had 2 jobs for it. I explained to them I was a dumb 16-year-old and mouthed off to my boss, and they, when they didn't show up on time for a shift, they booted me out. And I was like, okay. And then I got another job, which I liked, but unfortunately my boss wasn't good at managing money, so when I would get paid, my checks would bounce, and then he would have to pay me in cash, and then all of a sudden the business went under. So I was like, all right, I was going to put in a 2-week, but then I quit. And then she began asking me, do you know who you are? I'm like, yes, I know who I am. And then as I'm trying to say who I am, interrupts me, next question. Next question. Okay, I think we've determined that. She goes all through my behavioral health history, asking me about every single thing through my behavioral health history. So here's why I'm making these videos. I went through all my behavioral health records, like I've said in the first part 1 video. I found her eval. She diagnosed me with other specified adult personality disorder. And I'm like, why? She said that I displayed arrogant, haughty attitude, and I'm like, what? Through that whole thing, the only thing I was thinking about was fucking killing myself. I just wanted to, like, be somewhere where I could get better. Just stop the outside influence for at least a little bit. And I'm there. And she's like, oh, yeah, no, you're impulsive. That's why we had to do that, because you do things impulsively. I'm like, okay. I explained 11 Bravos are impulsive. Growing up, I was always told, you hesitate. When you get told you hesitate, I don't know, you start to become impulsive and do things. I explained that to them. Then she kept interrupting me, like, oh yeah, what do you want to do when you get out of the Army? I'm like, I want to be a cop. She's like, oh, that's probably not going to happen with this. I'm like, isn't there another career that you want to do? And I'm like, how about I didn't say this to her, but that in my mind, how about I do what the fuck I want to do with my life? Because if I'm getting kicked out of the fucking Army, I'm going to put this career behind me like a chapter. Not have some looming thing following me for the rest of my fucking life that has to be brought up every time I try to do something with myself. If I want to serve my nation, I'm going to serve my nation. If I want to serve my community, I'm going to serve my fucking community. So, and then as I'm rebuttaling the things she's saying, she starts getting a little concerned, and it's just, oh, it was great working with you. And I'm like, shook her hand. She gets up and leaves, and I'm like, what the fuck was that? So they wanted to diagnose me with borderline, but I didn't have enough for that. I'm like, why did they just randomly want to diagnose me with it? Here's what's going on. When the Robinson Behavioral Health Clinics gets a soldier that command thinks is a problem, they try to diagnose them with some type of personality disorder or something to get them a 513 to get them out. You know why soldiers commit suicide at Fort Liberty? The majority of the 82nd, a good 3 brigades of the whole division goes to Robinson. The commanders gossip way too much with the behavioral health officers, the BHOs. They take Instead of being impartial, they take the things that the commander says as fact. The whole time that they were talking to me, they didn't want to fucking help me, and they didn't care. And I realized that day. And I was fucking angry. It seemed any time I pulled myself out of it for the boys, I gotta help myself for the boys, I get pulled back by the system that's supposed to be fucking helping me. I had it. I began lying on my sheets and be like, yeah, I'm good. I'm not suicidal at all. No. I wanted to fucking die. I was done. So, discharging, knowing everything, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I was done. I get out. Talk to the rear D commander. Cool dude. Still talk to this dude to this day. He was a phenomenal officer, but unfortunately he got medically retired. Which is why he was in the rear, being the rear detachment battalion commander. Just talking to me, and he was shocked to see that I wasn't a problem. I did exactly what he said, which was easy. Being that I had attempted suicide, they wanted me watched 24/7, so go hang out at brigade staff duty, there's nothing going on. Alright, extra duty starting. Go to extra duty. Like, it was simple shit. And he began to, he's like, hey, dude, so do you want to get chaptered? And I'm like, no, I don't want to get chaptered. And if I'm getting chaptered, I'm not getting another than honorable. So do you want to fight this? I'm like, goddamn right I want to fucking fight this, sir. So he contacts my commander. And she says, wait. I'll get you an honorable. I'm like, hold the phone. A letter of intent is simply a recommendation. And 06 can easily change that. And 06 has that power. She told me in the hospital, it's just a recommendation. I'm not the final authority here. Now all of a sudden, she goes, I'm going to get you an honorable. How the fuck does that work? She was intimidated that I was going to the board because she knew I would expose the bullshit that she was doing. So, alright, they began working. Things were going alright. Showing up to extra duty, doing my thing, but I wasn't sleeping. And I was trying not to think about the experience I had at Robinson Behavioral Health. Just what killed me is you gotta be positive, man. And everything in the Army is going to shit for you. There's one thing you always have. You got behavioral health. People say, oh, you have the chaplain. The chaplain's one person. Behavioral health is for you. That's what's so great about it. And in my mind, I'm like, these people aren't helping me. Because every appointment, I went to a safety check at behavioral health, and I'm like, fuck this. These people don't give a shit about me. Not all of them. I did have a sub-C appointment at Robinson, and I talked to a therapist there who was great. I'm like, oh, wow. But unfortunately, even though they're a great therapist there, the BHOs that run the behavioral health side of that clinic are the reason that it's fucking shit. And I just talked to one of the BHOs. I'm like, I want to remove this diagnosis. This is bullshit. I'm like, I am sick and tired of coming here. I shouldn't come to a therapy appointment and have anxiety and be fucking worried. I'm fucking tired of this shit. I didn't care, man. I was done. You know, I accepted the dumb shit I did. I completely understood. I acted on becoming an NCO and I lost my fucking rank. But the way that I was being treated was just not fucking right. I had it. So, upon my discharge, I had collected about 140 of the exchange brand sleeping pills. One night, the thoughts came back of OTH, this and that, and I had to turn my game off. I just got done at extra duty, you know, so I got back, was playing Xbox. Thoughts came, I was like, fuck this. Took the bag out and I began taking the pills. Every 2-3 minutes I'd take 3 or 4 pills. Next thing I know, the bag's empty. At some point, I'm like, when am I gonna die? Then at some point I thought I was invincible. I'm like, could it be that I'm a big dude and I could take all these pills? I'm like, nothing can happen. And I'm like, I guess it's not doing anything to me. And as I get up to go to the bathroom, all of a sudden I'm paralyzed standing. And I'm like, I felt the sharpest pain in my brain that I've ever felt in my fucking life. Then all of a sudden my body felt like 1,000,000 pounds. I felt like picking up my limbs was effort. Like just moving my hands was impossible. And I'm like, holy shit, I fucked up. I'll never forget the brigade staff duty at COSC. I talked to him. He's like, I'm going through shit too, man. You can call me anytime and I'll be there for you. And at this point, they had done their safety check, and I planned for it. When they did their safety check, I waited so I could just off myself. And I regretted it. I still wanted to die at that time, but I'm like, holy shit, the fucking pain was intense. So I called him. He was there in like 3 minutes. What's up, brother? He goes, what's up, brother? And I'm like, sorry, I fucked up. My heart started pounding. I started getting worried. And then all of a sudden I was fine. I would go in and out. I'd be pain, 1,000,000 pounds, and then fine. So I didn't know if I was good or if I wasn't good. So